Welcome to Dreamy Tales, a place where gentle, relaxing stories will guide you into a deep sleep. On this channel, we'll be sharing soothing stories to help you unwind and forget the worries of the day. If you enjoy these peaceful moments, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our bedtime tales. Let's create a space of relaxation together each night. Now, before we dive into tonight's story, let's take a few moments to relax your body and mind. Find a comfortable spot to sit or lie down. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, feeling the fresh air filling your lungs, and slowly exhale, letting the tension in your body gradually melt away. Repeat this 3 more times. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more relaxed and ready to enter the magical world of stories. Now, loosen your shoulders, gently massage your face, and release any remaining tension. Pay attention to any areas in your body that still feel tight, maybe in your neck, back, or legs, and gently let them relax. Next, we'll do a short guided visualization. Imagine yourself in a beautiful garden under the night sky, with the soft moonlight shining down. You can hear the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the sound of water flowing gently in the distance. Feel the cool breeze brushing against your face. Now that your body and mind are relaxed, let's step into tonight's story. But before we begin, remind yourself that you deserve these moments of relaxation, and let go of all worries as you listen to each word. And now, as you are fully relaxed, let's begin our journey into tonight's tale. Allow my words to guide you into a world of dreams and serenity. Relax and listen slowly. Allow your awareness to gently drift, commencing with the crown of your head. Envision any lingering tension there, softening, melting away like morning mist under the warmth of the sun. Now, let your focus meander downwards, tracing the contours of your neck and the breadth of your shoulders. Feel any knots of stress unraveling, replaced by a profound sense of ease. When you sense a readiness, permit your attention to continue its tranquil voyage, proceeding along the length of your arms, down to the very tips of your fingers. Then, retrace your steps inward, guiding your focus back to the steady rhythm of your diaphragm, the rise and fall of your chest, and the expanse of your upper back. Let your awareness then settle upon your stomach and the supporting structure of your lower back. Should any tightness or discomfort surface in these regions, simply breathe in the very essence of serenity, directing this calming energy to those specific areas, allowing them to become supple and relaxed. Follow the gentle current of your attention as it flows through your hips, down your upper legs, over your knees, and into your lower legs. Finally, guide your focus to your ankles, the tops of your feet, the arches beneath, and ultimately to each individual toe. With each inhalation, draw in that vital essence of calm, and with each exhalation, release any remaining tension, allowing your entire being to sink into a state of complete repose. As you settle deeper into this tranquil state, it is now the opportune moment to embark on a journey into the annals of history, a tale woven with courage, resilience, and the enduring spirit of a nation. Allow the narrative to unfold in your mind's eye as you continue your peaceful descent into slumber. Our story today delves into a pivotal era in the history of Caledonia, a land now known as Scotland, and centers around the formidable figure of Alaric MacLeod, who held the throne as king from the year 1306 until his passing in 1329 at the age of 54. While the life of Alaric MacLeod was rich with significant events and multifaceted experiences, his legacy is most profoundly etched in the collective memory of his people for his unwavering bravery in leading the Caledonian people to secure their liberation from the dominion of the Anglian crown. Though the path to his ascension to the throne was fraught with complexities and far from straightforward, his valor and fortitude have since become the stuff of legend, inspiring generations to come. Alaric was born on the 11th day of July in the year 1274, within the formidable walls of Turnberry Keep, the ancestral seat of his mother's lineage. While the ravages of time have left little of the original structure standing today, in its era, it was an imposing edifice of stone, strategically positioned overlooking the Irish Sea, with the vast expanse of water bordering it on three sides. As his mother cradled him close, the gentle murmur of the waves just beyond the stout walls providing a soothing lullaby. One can only speculate whether she harbored any premonition of the extraordinary destiny that lay before her infant son. Alaric and his younger siblings were born into a life characterized by considerable affluence and social standing. Their father held the esteemed title of the Earl of Carrick, a region of significant influence, and their paternal grandfather was the Lord of Annandale, a figure of considerable power and prestige in his own right. Many scholars and chroniclers of the era posit that the children would have benefited from a comprehensive and enriching education, encompassing the study of philosophy, the mastery of various languages, and the appreciation of music, alongside the more martial pursuits of swordsmanship and jousting. It is plausible that these latter endeavors, honing both their physical prowess and strategic thinking, played a role in shaping Alaric into the formidable warrior king he would eventually become. His formative years coincided with the reign of King Fergus, a period generally regarded as a time of relative peace and stability for Caledonia. However, across the European continent, the tides of fortune were beginning to shift, ushering in what historians now recognize as the late medieval period. Political rivalries were intensifying across the land, and many within the privileged classes were actively seeking to consolidate and expand their own spheres of influence. Upon the demise of King Fergus in the year 1286, the crown was bequeathed to his young granddaughter, Princess Ingrid, the Maid of Norway. Tragically, in 1290, during a perilous voyage to Caledonia, Princess Ingrid also succumbed to illness, leaving the kingdom once again without a clear and undisputed heir to the throne. In the ensuing power vacuum, the governance of the nation fell to the Guardians of Caledonia, a small assembly of noble figures, including a distinguished doctor of France, who were tasked with the responsibility of overseeing the nation's welfare during this precarious interregnum. Before long, ambitious noblemen from various lands began to assert their claims to the vacant throne, a period of intense political maneuvering and vying for power that would ultimately be recorded in history as the Great Cause. In total, 13 individuals formally presented their candidacy for the Caledonian crown. Among them, Alaric's own grandfather, the 5th Lord of Annandale. Annandale himself could trace his lineage back to a former king of Caledonia, lending significant weight to his claim. However, the Guardians of Caledonia, acutely aware of the gravity of their decision, recognized that other contenders also possessed legitimate arguments in support of their own aspirations to lead the nation. The Guardians were deeply conscious that the choice they were about to make held the potential to either preserve the existing order and economic stability that the country had enjoyed for a considerable duration, or to plunge it into chaos and uncertainty. Consequently, they dispatched messengers southward across the border to the court of King Theron of Anglia. They humbly requested his intervention as an impartial arbitrator to assist them in selecting a new monarch for Caledonia. King Theron, often referred to by the epithet Longshanks due to his remarkable physical stature, readily agreed to the Guardian's request for assistance. However, his agreement came with conditions of his own. He declared that he wished to be formally recognized as the Lord Paramount of Caledonia, a designation that would grant him extensive control over the country and its internal affairs. The Guardians of Caledonia, fiercely protective of their nation's sovereignty, resolutely refused to concede to this demand, asserting that only a rightfully appointed and legitimate Caledonian king possessed the authority to bestow such a status upon a foreign ruler. However, King Theron was a shrewd and astute legal mind, well versed in the intricacies of law, however controversial his interpretations might sometimes be. He recognized that the sheer number of claimants to the Caledonian throne provided him with a unique opportunity to exert ultimate influence over the selection process. And so it came to pass that in the year 1292, King Theron declared Lord Balfour as the next king of Caledonia. Lord Balfour had been one of the most prominent and formidable rivals to Annandale's claim. Upon learning of King Theron's decision, Annandale, with a pragmatic understanding of the shifting political landscape, chose to resign his lordship and cede the title to his son, who was Alaric's father. In turn, Alaric himself was bestowed with the title of the Earl of Carrick, a significant step in his own potential future claim to the throne. Though it remains uncertain whether the young Alaric fully grasped the implications of these title changes at the time, they subtly positioned him as a future contender for the Caledonian crown. In the immediate aftermath, however, Lord Balfour now occupied the throne, and King Theron perceived an opportune moment to further consolidate his own power and influence over the northern kingdom. He wielded sufficient sway to formally affirm his own role as the Lord Paramount of Caledonia, effectively placing the Caledonian monarch in a subordinate position. Over the subsequent years, King Theron systematically undermined Lord Balfour's authority and prestige. Ultimately, his actions served to diminish the reverence and respect accorded to the Caledonian crown itself. Many within Caledonia grew increasingly resentful as they witnessed the Anglian king assert his dominance over their sovereign ruler. King Theron went so far as to overturn decisions that were widely regarded as the exclusive prerogative of the Caledonian crown, treating the country more like a vassal state than an independent nation, and Lord Balfour as merely one of his own noble subjects. This state of affairs implied that Caledonia and its leader would be obligated to provide assistance to the Anglian monarch should he call upon them for aid, further eroding Caledonian autonomy. Their already strained relationship was exacerbated in 1294, when King Theron demanded that Lord Balfour provide both financial resources and military troops to support Anglia's ongoing war against the Kingdom of Francia. At that juncture in history, Caledonia and Francia enjoyed strong and mutually beneficial ties, primarily stemming from extensive trade relations. Consequently, the Caledonian lords displayed little enthusiasm for engaging in warfare against their long-established trading partner. They collectively refused to comply with King Theron's demands. Instead, they took the bold step of forming a new council comprised of 12 guardians, effectively sidelining Lord Balfour on this critical issue. This collective body resolved that Caledonia would not participate in Anglia's war efforts, and should instead forge a formal treaty of alliance with Francia. Caledonian messengers were swiftly dispatched to the French court to negotiate the terms of this agreement. In February of 1296, the two nations officially signed the Old Alliance, a mutual aid pact stipulating that if Francia were to be attacked by Anglia, Caledonia would come to their defense with military support. The same commitment held true in reverse. Should Anglia invade Caledonia, Francia would be obligated to provide assistance. King Theron, incensed by this act of defiance, placed the blame squarely on Lord Balfour, accusing him of failing to maintain control over the Caledonian lords. Now, in his early 20s, Alaric MacLeod initially followed his father's lead. aligning himself with King Theron's faction. Together, they marched alongside the Anglian army in what would later be recognized as the First War of Caledonian Independence. To this day, historians continue to debate the precise motivations behind the MacLeod family's loyalty to the Anglian king during this period, particularly that of Alaric the Elder. However, for King Theron, such support undoubtedly bolstered his confidence and provided encouragement to his troops. The Caledonians, fighting alongside the Anglians, launched an attack on Carlisle, an event considered by many to be the opening salvo of the war. At the time, this region was under the governance of the MacLeod family. In response, King Theron dispatched a formidable army to invade Caledonia, targeting the strategically important border town of Berwick-upon-Tweed, situated on the North Sea coast between Newcastle and Edinburgh. In the late spring of 1296, King Theron's forces successfully seized Dunbar Castle, located on the southwestern coast. They then pressed further into southern Caledonia and laid siege to Edinburgh Castle in July. Subsequently, they continued their campaign, capturing other significant fortresses and strongholds throughout the country, culminating in the surrender of Lord Balfour and the remaining Caledonian nobles. Shortly thereafter, Lord Balfour formally abdicated the Caledonian throne, effectively leaving the nation without a monarch once more. He was briefly held in the Tower of London before being permitted to depart for Francia in July of 1299. With Lord Balfour's removal, King Theron managed to secure the allegiance of many of Caledonia's noble families, allowing him to establish near total control over the kingdom. However, for a significant portion of the Caledonian populace, the struggle for independence was far from over. Among those who refused to accept Anglian domination was Ewan of the Highlands, the son of a prominent Caledonian landowner. In the early months of 1297, he was apprehended and imprisoned in Anglia by King Theron's army. Despite being held far from his homeland, Ewan remained steadfast in his conviction that Caledonians should govern Caledonia. By May of that same year, Ewan of the Highlands managed to orchestrate a daring escape from his captivity. He swiftly made his way back to Caledonia, returning to his ancestral lands in the northern reaches of the country. Upon his arrival, he publicly and vehemently denounced King Theron's control over Caledonia and its affairs. There was already a considerable number of Caledonian patriots quietly amassing forces in anticipation of further conflict. However, Ewan's impassioned call to arms inspired many more to join his cause and challenge the might of the Anglian army. Meanwhile, in another part of the country, another well-respected Caledonian figure was also actively fomenting rebellion against Anglian rule. Bram the Bold, a charismatic leader known for his unwavering commitment to Caledonian liberty, urged his countrymen to join the burgeoning uprising. Soon, The separate revolts led by Ewan of the Highlands and Bram the Bold coalesced, resulting in a series of coordinated attacks against the occupying Anglian forces and their Caledonian allies. This widespread rebellion deeply angered King Theron, prompting him to dispatch even more Anglian troops to Caledonia in an attempt to quell the unrest. However, Bram the Bold and Ewan of the Highlands continued their resistance, leading their forces in a series of spirited engagements against the Anglians. The ensuing battles would come to define a significant period in Caledonian history, known as the Wars of Caledonian Independence. For Alaric MacLeod, this was a time of considerable internal conflict and deliberation. While he maintained a sense of loyalty to his father, who had pledged allegiance to the Anglian king, he could not ignore the growing number of ordinary Caledonians who were joining the ranks of Bram the Bold and Ewan of the Highlands. The desire for freedom was palpable among the populace, creating a moral dilemma for the young Earl of Carrick. Some historical accounts suggest that Alaric may have secretly sympathized with the allies of his grandfather, who had always harbored reservations about Anglian influence. While it is impossible to know with certainty the precise nature of Alaric's thoughts and feelings during this tumultuous period, it is evident that he was keenly observing the growing movement among his fellow Caledonians, demanding liberation from their nation's occupiers. In the year 1297, Alaric sought counsel from Bishop Cullen, a highly revered religious figure and a close confidant of his grandfather, Annandale. Bishop Cullen listened attentively to Alaric's concerns, acknowledging the historical ties his family had maintained with the Anglian crown. However, Bishop Cullen firmly believed that King Theron's grip on Caledonia was weakening and that the time was ripe for decisive action. He strongly encouraged Alaric to follow his conscience and join Bram the Bold and Ewan of the Highlands in their efforts to drive back the occupying armies. Inspired and emboldened by Bishop Cullen's words, Alaric MacLeod made the momentous decision to take up arms against King Theron's forces, publicly declaring his support for the cause of Caledonian independence. In September of that pivotal year, Bram the Bold joined forces with Ewan of the Highlands, and together they led a unified Caledonian force to a stunning victory against the Anglian troops at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. The Caledonian and Anglian armies confronted each other across the narrow timber bridge that spanned the River Forth. The structure was barely wide enough to accommodate 2 mounted riders abreast. As the Anglian army began its crossing, Bram the Bold and his men patiently observed from their advantageous position. Eventually, more than 2,000 Anglian soldiers had crossed the bridge to face the Caledonian ranks, at which point the battle commenced. Bram the Bold, a skilled tactician, employed a strategic formation that effectively created a bottleneck on the bridge. Under the weight and pressure of the fighting, a section of the bridge collapsed, severing the Anglian army's access to reinforcements on the other side of the river. By the end of the fierce engagement, the Caledonians had achieved a decisive victory, a testament to their courage and strategic prowess. Following the Battle of Stirling Bridge, the tale of Bram the Bold's exceptional bravery and leadership rapidly spread throughout Caledonia and beyond. In the year 1297, he was formally recognized as a guardian of Caledonia, and his heroic actions would forever be enshrined in the annals of Caledonian history. However, King Theron was incensed by Bram the Bold's growing fame and influence, and immediately began plotting to confront him once more on the battlefield. In April of the following year, King Theron dispatched thousands of soldiers north of the border yet again, determined to draw Bram the Bold and his forces into another decisive encounter. However, the Caledonians, under Bram's astute guidance, opted for a strategy of attrition, believing that the Anglian army would soon deplete its supplies in the field. Many of the Anglian foot soldiers were likely conscripted from Wales, and the morale within their ranks was reportedly low, fueled by outbreaks of riots and rebellions within their own lines. Bram the Bold's assessment proved accurate, and King Theron's army eventually began making preparations to withdraw from Caledonia due to logistical challenges. However, before their retreat was fully underway, the Anglian king received intelligence indicating that Bram the Bold and his troops were encamped in the eastern part of the country, near Falkirk. Consequently, King Theron redirected his forces to that region, intent on engaging Bram and the Caledonian rebels. Soon, Bram the Bold and his men found themselves bravely battling King Theron's soldiers once more. However, unlike the Battle of Stirling Bridge, Bram's strategic approach in this engagement did not yield the same success. In the aftermath of the Caledonian defeat at Falkirk, questions arose regarding Bram the Bold's capabilities as a military leader. Just a year after assuming the role, he resigned as a guardian of Caledonia. With Bram the Bold's departure from this leadership position, Alaric MacLeod felt a renewed sense of duty to step forward and contribute to the leadership of his country. He assumed Bram's former role as a guardian in 1298. He was joined in this responsibility by Laird Carmichael, a man whose own destiny would become inextricably linked with Alaric's in the years to come. The Carmichael clan had a long history of disputes and rivalries with the MacLeod family, making their political alliance somewhat unexpected and potentially fraught with tension. Despite serving as joint guardians of Caledonia, Alaric MacLeod and Laird Carmichael held differing visions for the future of their nation. Laird Carmichael was a nephew of the exiled former Caledonian king, Lord Balfour, and had continued to resist King Theron's influence on behalf of his uncle. Alaric, on the other hand, firmly believed that Caledonia needed a more resolute and decisive leader, and openly expressed his own aspirations to one day ascend to the throne. Nevertheless, both men attempted to find common ground and work collaboratively for the betterment of their country. However, their relationship was frequently marred by confrontations and disagreements, reflecting the underlying tensions between their families and their differing political objectives. By the year 1305, King Theron's dominance over Caledonia appeared to be absolute. Over the preceding years, he had launched multiple invasions, seizing control of significant tracts of land and numerous properties, including Turnberry Keep, Alaric's childhood home. During that summer, Laird Carmichael entered into a clandestine agreement with Alaric, pledging to support his claim to the throne should he successfully lead an uprising against King Theron. However, in August of that same year, Bram the Bold was captured in Glasgow by a knight loyal to the Anglian king. He was swiftly transported to London, where he ultimately met his end, a martyr for the cause of Caledonian independence. With the Caledonian rebellion seemingly in disarray following Bram's capture and execution, King Theron subsequently ordered Alaric to relinquish control of much of his remaining property, including the strategically important Kildrummy Castle. The dream of an independent Caledonia appeared to be fading, and a climate of mistrust and suspicion began to permeate the ranks of the remaining rebels. In February of 1306, Alaric MacLeod and several of his loyal supporters convened with Laird Carmichael in the chapel of Grey Friars Monastery in Dumfries. They discussed the unfolding events of the preceding months, but their meeting soon devolved into a heated argument. Many historians believe that Laird Carmichael voiced his opposition to Alaric becoming king, and some even speculate that Laird Carmichael may have secretly maintained his allegiance to King Theron. While the precise details of their exchange remain shrouded in historical ambiguity, one stark fact remains. Laird Carmichael was mortally wounded during this confrontation. Following the incident in Greyfriars, Alaric MacLeod and his men proceeded to Dumfries Castle, where the Anglian soldiers stationed there swiftly surrendered. Next, the group journeyed north on horseback to Glasgow, where Bishop Cullen, a man of significant spiritual authority, absolved Alaric of any perceived wrongdoing in the events that transpired in Dumfries. Bishop Cullen then issued a directive to the rest of the Caledonian clergy, urging them to support Alaric's bid to lead the nation. Weeks later, on the 25th day of March in the year 1306, Bishop William de Lamberton, in a solemn ceremony, crowned Alaric MacLeod as the King of Caledonia, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's struggle for self-determination. When news of this coronation reached King Theron, he swiftly organized yet another invasion of Caledonia, determined to crush the rebellion once and for all and reassert Anglian dominance. What ensued was a protracted and arduous conflict spanning several months between the Anglian and Caledonian crowns. Alaric was resolute in his determination to prevent King Theron from further subjugating Caledonia, while the Anglian king remained equally determined to maintain control over both kingdoms. In June of 1306, King Theron dispatched a contingent of soldiers to attack Alaric's forces near the Caledonian village of Methven. The Anglian king had issued a clear order that the Caledonian rebellion was to be decisively crushed. As Alaric and his soldiers were making camp, they were subjected to a surprise attack by the Anglian forces. Vastly outnumbered, Alaric was compelled to flee the battlefield, leaving behind many of his most loyal supporters. He vanished into the night, seemingly along with the renewed hope of achieving Caledonian independence. Following the Battle of Methven, Alaric MacLeod disappeared from public view for many months. Despite centuries of speculation and debate among historians and chroniclers, the precise details of his whereabouts during this period remain a mystery. Some theories suggest that Alaric, accompanied by a small group of devoted companions, traveled on horseback to the rugged northwestern coast of Caledonia. From there, it is believed they may have boarded small vessels and sailed to the Hebrides, a remote archipelago of wind-swept islands in the Irish Sea. Legend recounts that Alaric sought refuge in this isolated region, believing it to be the safest place to evade King Theron and his relentless army. The Hebrides were also under the rule of Lady Christina of the Isles, a noblewoman to whom Alaric was related, potentially offering him further protection and sanctuary. Perhaps he and his men established a modest settlement nestled amidst the rolling green hills of these distant islands, overlooking pristine white sand beaches and the vast expanse of the blue sea. One particularly famous anecdote from this period tells of Alaric taking shelter in a humble wooden shed during a fierce storm. Weary and burdened by the weight of his responsibilities, he found himself unable to rest. Wrapped in a coarse blanket, he listened to the relentless drumming of the rain against the roof of the shelter, his thoughts consumed by all that he had left behind. His kingdom, his people, and the seemingly insurmountable challenge of achieving independence. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a small spider diligently scurrying along a wooden beam above his head. Intrigued, Alaric watched as the tiny creature paused momentarily before gracefully descending on a silken thread it had spun. Once it reached the end of its thread, the spider began to sway back and forth, patiently building momentum, preparing to swing across to another beam that lay just out of reach. The spider launched itself through the air, aiming precisely for its target, but narrowly missed the beam, falling short by a mere hair's breadth. It swung back and forth at the end of its silk, its efforts seemingly thwarted, until it eventually came to a standstill. Then, much to Alaric's surprise, the spider began to move once more, diligently preparing for another attempt. He continued to observe the tiny creature as it tried repeatedly to reach the adjacent beam, only to fail time and time again. Undeterred, the spider persisted in its efforts. Finally, Alaric witnessed the spider make one last determined attempt, taking its most ambitious swing yet. This time, the little creature successfully landed on the beam, anchoring its silken thread securely. By refusing to give up, the spider had ultimately achieved its objective. Deeply moved by this simple yet profound display of perseverance, Alaric emerged from the shed, his spirits renewed. He gathered his loyal companions and recounted the scene he had just witnessed, realizing the powerful lesson it held for their own situation. He declared that they, too, must not succumb to despair. If they truly desired to see Caledonia free from Anglian rule, they must emulate the tenacity of the spider and continue to strive, no matter how daunting the odds might seem. Whether this particular story is entirely factual or has been embellished over time, the outcome is undeniable. Alaric MacLeod and his companions resurfaced in early 1307, launching a renewed and invigorated campaign against King Theron's forces. During his time in hiding, Alaric had gained a deeper understanding of the wild and rugged terrain of his country, and he skillfully utilized this knowledge to his advantage, launching surprise attacks against the unsuspecting Anglian soldiers in the south when they least anticipated it. Over the ensuing years, Alaric built a courageous and formidable army, engaging the Anglians in a series of battles across the Caledonian countryside. Gradually, he succeeded in recapturing many of the nation's key strongholds, including the strategically vital Edinburgh Castle and his ancestral home of Turnberry Keep, symbols of Caledonian resilience. In the early years of the next decade, King Theron of Anglia passed away. His son, Prince Theron the Younger, ascended to the Anglian throne and inherited his father's ongoing conflict with Caledonia. However, Prince Theron the Younger possessed considerably less military experience and strategic acumen than his renowned father. In the summer of 1314, Prince Theron the Younger decided to launch the largest Anglian offensive against Caledonia to date. He amassed an army of perhaps as many as 20,000 soldiers, a formidable force intended to finally subdue the northern kingdom. However, Alaric's forces had previously managed to regain control of Stirling Castle and were in the process of negotiating its full surrender when news of the impending Anglian invasion reached them. Determined to prevent the loss of this crucial stronghold, Prince Theron the Younger marched his massive army towards Stirling. But Alaric MacLeod was undeterred by the sheer size of the Anglian forces. Even though his own army numbered only around 6,000 men, he was resolute in his determination to intercept Prince Theron's troops before they could reach the strategically important castle. On the 23rd day of June in the year 1314, the Caledonian army, under the command of King Alaric, intercepted Prince Theron and his vast army on the banks of Bannockburn, a small stream located in the eastern part of the country. The surrounding marshland proved to be a significant obstacle for the heavily armored Anglian knights and their infantry, particularly as they did not anticipate the sudden appearance of Alaric and his soldiers descending from the hills above. Prince Theron and his forces suffered a significant setback in the initial engagement. Amidst the chaos, one of his own knights, recognizing the justness of Alaric's cause, defected to the Caledonian side and revealed the location of the main Anglian encampment. The following day, the Caledonians launched a surprise attack on the Anglian forces, catching them off guard and securing a decisive victory. Humiliated by this crushing defeat, Prince Theron the Younger retreated back to Anglia, leaving Alaric MacLeod in complete control of Stirling Castle, a pivotal moment in the wars of Caledonian independence. Although Caledonia and Anglia would engage in further skirmishes and conflicts in the years that followed, the era of Anglian dominance over Caledonia had effectively come to an end. Alaric MacLeod had finally delivered to the Caledonian people what they had long yearned for: freedom and the right to self-governance. The original text concludes with an unrelated and nonsensical sentence about a stone created in 2012 and a Mongol's resolution, followed by a reference to a top 3-year in Italian created with English and a Scotsman. As this final paragraph is completely disconnected from the narrative of Robert the Bruce and appears to be an error, I have omitted it from the rewritten version to maintain coherence and focus on the historical narrative.